Oh, hey guys. I didn't know you were going to be here. I would have made coffee. Yeah, since I've been working from home, this is kind of what I've been wearing every day. But hey, I'm glad you're here. Do you mind if I show you some tips with the Guardian knee? All right, let me make that coffee. Hey everybody, I'm John Szasz, the technical service guy over at College Park. I've got our Guardian knee here, and I wanted to show you a few things. The first thing I wanted to show you is turning on and off the manual locking mode. So this is a friction brake knee or a weight activated stance control knee, meaning when you put weight onto the prosthesis, this clamp inside compresses on the access point and prevents it from moving, and that's the brake. But it can be used as a manual locking knee, and I'll show you how to activate that and deactivate that. Okay, here we can see the knee is just in the weight activated stance control mode, so locking mode is not on right now. Now if I just take my 4mm wrench here, now I'm going to turn this fastener to the left, do one full turn, and now if I open the knee and close it, you hear it click, and now it's locked. Now I can do this by hand. Normally you would use a cable here, but I can push it down with my thumb and get it to unlock, and then it just locks again. So again, I can push it down with my thumb to unlock it, and it clicks to lock. Okay, so unlocking the knee using the release cable. Normally this would obviously be attached to a socket. I've got a T-handle here. But what's important to remember is there needs to be weight on the toe and off of the heel. So the weight needs to be on the toe, and then when you pull up on the cable, the knee will unlock. Now see how I have my hand on the front handle here? That's to make sure all the weight is on the toe. If there's any weight on the heel, it's going to make that lock very hard to disengage. Now what I can also do is when I pull up on the lock, if I have an extension moment and just kick the knee forward, it will also unlock then. So I've got the cable pulled up, and now I'm just going to kick the leg forward and it will unlock. And then when there's weight put back on it, it locks again. So weighting the toe is very important. So this is just a safety feature. When there's weight, like somebody would be standing on it, we don't want that knee to unlock. We want it to be intentional. So a little weight in the toe and then unlock. Now if you're doing all those things and it's still difficult to unlock the knee, it could be the stance flexion adjustment. So you may want to take a look at that. If you've taken the stance flexion out of the knee, you may need to introduce more stance flexion back into the knee. So let me show you what I mean. Okay, now on the front is our stance flexion adjustment. Stance flexion is this gap right here. So that's sort of like a shock absorber for the knee. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but there's about 4 degrees of this shock absorption, this stance flexion. Now I've got stance flexion maxed out. I've got the most stance flexion I can have, and I have this knee in locking mode. And now you can see when I push weight on the toe, it unlocks pretty easily there. Now I want to show you what happens when I take away that stance flexion. Now if I turn this clockwise to the right, now I'm removing that stance flexion from the knee. So I went about halfway there. Now I'm going to try to unlock it. Okay, it still goes, but the knee is more difficult to unlock, and it moves slower. So let's go all the way. Remove the stance flexion completely. Okay, now I can't remove it anymore. Now when I push down on this lock, I can't unlock it. It just won't unlock. Removing Too much of that stance flexion can bind up the knee, especially when you have the brake set at the most sensitive. So now I will go ahead and reintroduce that stance flexion. I'll max it out again by turning that dial counterclockwise. A little bit of weight on the toe, and now the knee unlocks again. So you always want to check that stance flexion. If you don't have enough, it may be causing some problems with getting the knee to unlock or binding up. Now to exit locking mode or turn it off, I'm going to unlock the knee here and flex it completely. And then I'll just do the opposite of what I did before. I'm going to turn this fastener to the right until it stops. It should feel some resistance there and stop. And now you're back in the weight activated mode, friction brake mode. See, it's not locking now. Load dependence is the brake sensitivity. So the higher the load dependence, the more weight is required to activate the brake. So a higher load dependence means a less sensitive brake. A lower load dependence means a more sensitive brake. It takes less weight to activate the braking function. Now, out of the box, it's set to the most sensitive function. So the load dependence is at its minimum. Now, to increase that, we use the load dependence and we turn that to the right. I'm going to turn that clockwise towards the plus sign. We want to increase load dependence. That makes the brake less sensitive. It requires more load to activate the brake. Now if you want it more sensitive, you want the brake as sensitive as possible, then you remove that load dependence. Lower load dependence. It requires less weight to activate the brake. Now if this still isn't sensitive enough, you need the brake more sensitive. That's when you move to the stance flexion and remove a little bit of that stance flexion. But like you saw before, too much can bind it up. So a little adjustment goes a long way. Once we have our load dependence where we want it, we adjust our stance flexion if necessary. That's when we would move then to extension assist. So that's our order of operations and adjustment. Load dependence, stance flexion if necessary, and then extension assist. So this right here is where our extension assist adjustment is. Normally this would be up through where the pylon goes on other knees. Ours is on the top here. Increasing that extension assist makes the knee extend more easily, faster. Now if you're having trouble getting your wrench seated in there, it is at a little bit of an angle. So if I go straight in there, it does have to sort of fall into place. If you can see the angle of it, it's not a total straight shot. And if you're turning your wrench and you feel some resistance, good, you're in there. If not, if it's in there but it's just sort of spinning around, you're not in that fastener. So you gotta make sure you get seated in there. See, sometimes you can hear it click. There you go. Now you're in. Then you can adjust it. And it does take quite a few turns to reach from one end to the other. So if you're turning it and it's not, you feel like it's not doing anything, it may just be that there's a lot of turns. You can see I'm still turning it, and that's the other end. There's one end to the other. So as long as you're feeling some resistance when you turn it, you should be good. So those are all the tips I have for you today. I'm sure I can come up with something else and come back and visit you again. But feel free to give me a call anytime if you're having any issues. 1-800-294-7950 or go to college-park.com and check us out on the website. Go on the live chat. However you need to get a hold of us, go ahead and do it. I'm happy to help. All right. See you later.